What's a modern-day poison people willingly ingest? Story 1. 24-hour news cycle. My grandparents. All day, every day. It pains me to see. I've noticed this among my age group. Boomers TV on practically 24/7, especially news, and it repeats the same thing over and over. Spent the day with a friend, and that's all they wanted to do was sit and watch the news. They'd comment on something, then an hour later, when the same story was repeated, they'd comment like we hadn't already heard the same thing an hour ago. I don't even own a TV, and everything about my life is so very, very different. I replaced my mother-in-law's TV habit with adult coloring books and Alexa playing music all day. She's happier and no more paranoia. That's amazing, but man, aren't these people supposed to be older and wiser than us? Why do they fall for the TV bait so easily? Here's two possible pieces of the puzzle. People had a higher degree of accountability a few decades ago, or at least people in power generally acted with tact in public. So now, when a channel that says news blatantly lies at all times to promote political agendas, a lot of older people seem to just believe it and roll with it. The older people in the U.S. generally grew up with much more hateful ideologies that preach that there is a specific blueprint to be a good person, have a good life, etc. And anyone outside that is wrong. It still happens, of course, but instead of your parents, preacher, and racist uncle or whatever being your only source of knowledge and opinion, you have access to any viewpoint and more perspectives via the internet. So the people who grew up without that diversity of perspective are easier to manipulate because of their dwelling on and voting with their hatred. Couple that with how scary change can be in general and how fast things are changing, and you can see how it's easy to whip older people into a state of panic to manipulate them. There's not 24 hours worth of news, so they have to fill time by creating non-existent controversy and division. Love it when they just read or publish random tweets from pundits no one gives a smeg about outside of their social circles. Why are boomers just obsessed with this? What do they know that we don't? Maybe something they didn't have when younger? They grew up in an era when news was more trustworthy. The fairness doctrine of the United States Federal Communications Commission, FCC, introduced in 1949, was a policy that required the holders of broadcast licenses both to present controversial issues of public importance and to do so in a manner that fairly reflected differing viewpoints. In 1987, the FCC abolished the fairness doctrine. Yes, this. I think many of them feel that they're still watching Walter Cronkite and learning somewhat true and trustworthy things about the world. It's a comfortable genre in some deep sense, I think. Even though it's now sensationalist, scary, and horrible, I think they almost feel like it's their responsibility to watch the news. Signed, Gen Xer. Also, Gen X. Civics used to be a required class in some high schools, while the silent generation and boomers were growing up. They were taught to pay attention to current events at a time when balanced reporting was mandatory. A lot of them didn't understand what the fairness doctrine was, or notice its end. My guess is that since they're well into retirement and the kids are grown up, they have so much free time to consume the news. On the TV and on the toilet and in bed, etc. Yeah, but I think the question is more, why the news when there's so much better stuff to be consuming 24/7? Maybe my brain chemistry will change when I'm older, already in my 40s, but if I had 22 hours free a day and slept only 2, still exactly none of those hours would be spent watching any sort of news. Because it's working as intended. Those programs are engineered to evoke an emotional response, chiefly outrage, that keeps you sucked in. At the heart of it, it isn't so different than the content algorithms that keep people scrolling through Facebook, TikTok, or Reddit for hours on end. As you age, you'll find that almost all entertainment is no longer for your demographic and you'll lose interest. Also, boomers grew up on Walter Cronkite and David Brinkley. It says Davis in my script. News sources were trusted. They even deserve to be trusted a fair amount of the time. Unlike today, they see news as important and vital for them to watch. On top of that, they're overwhelmed by too much change, too fast. Their core beliefs have been bypassed years ago. Now, cable news networks fighting for ratings and clicks tell them alarming things, and they think they need to stay on top of it all. As a kid, we watched Cronkite, Huntley Brinkley, later McNeil Lehrer, and there were one or two others. But here's the thing. They were all on TV at the same time every night, maybe 6 to 7 p.m., and that was all. The rest of the time, there was no news in your face. Then the local stations started running slots around that time and added late-night news, then morning news, etc., ad infinitum. Then came Turner and CNN, and it was game over. I also think that as you get older, you get cut off from people more. Americans age 60 and older are alone for more than half of their daily measured time, which includes all waking hours except those spent engaged in personal activities such as grooming. All told, this amounts to about 7 hours a day, and among those who live by themselves, alone time rises to over 10 hours a day, according to a new Pew Research Center analysis of Bureau of Labor Statistics. Over 10 hours of daily time alone for older Americans living on their own. In comparison, people in their 40s and 50s spend about 4 hours and 45 minutes alone, and those younger than 40 spend about 3.5 hours a day alone, on average. Basically, the 24/7 news is a way to feel connected to the world that people became increasingly disconnected from as they get older. Cable news, etc., is the older generation's preferred form because most of them aren't familiar with the internet. But I suspect generations to follow will still have the same problems. You become increasingly disconnected from people, and you have less value to society and others once you retire. Generations to follow might have a better crutch with the internet, where you can sort of always socialize to some extent, but we all know what social media is doing to the younger generations using them. It's hard to say it's going to be a huge improvement as people get older. Also, I would say that some sites are not unlike 24/7 news. It's actually quite similar in many ways, but it has a component of interaction that 24/7 cable news doesn't have. Facebook operates pretty similarly as well. Facebook is probably like the 24/7 cable news of the 40 to 50-year-olds right now. Essentially, all of them are conveying news to people all the time, interspersed with other content. If you've ever watched some local news channels, they do the same thing, putting some fun content in. Yes, there's some segments on Fox where it's literally just pure hatred/anger driven, but overall I think people don't realize how much most of us rely on these things to get a sense of what's going on around us. It's just that when we're younger, we don't need it as often. If you're younger and don't look at some online sites, you'll probably still know about things going on because you'll hear people talking about it because you're around people. If you're older and you've never watched news or anything, you'd likely have no clue what's happening in the world. I think that's very true. I think each generation really has our own thing that we're addicted to. For the boomer generation, for the older people, those news networks are them, and they find those effective. For Gen X people like me, it's some of the online stuff and Facebook and some of that, and for older generations, it's TikTok. It's something that I think is just generational, that the people that are in control just have realized they can hook us on. Story 2. Those shorts videos that are now almost in every platform. If you have problems with focus and getting smeg done, then you know if you keep watching them, you might end up in the next day without even realizing you haven't done anything yet. One creator I watch on YouTube has basically said, I have to resort to making these shorts or I'll disappear as a creator. It's awful that these platforms are forcing it on everyone involved. Yeah, I follow a few people, and they're always apologizing about clickbait titles and misleading thumbnails, but say they don't get nearly as much traffic without them. There's a guy that I watch that does a bunch of car stuff on YouTube. He's pretty successful, doing well enough that he quit his mechanic job to do YouTube stuff full time. Anyway, he had a video about a short of his that went viral and had millions of views, but his earnings from the short were a pittance compared to those of a full-length video with less views. I thought that was interesting. Edit, so people will stop asking. It's no-nonsense know-how. It's great for bringing entertainment to your platform, but you need to link them to your main channel somehow. Shorts have no ads, so no revenue, and it's extremely hard/annoying to sponsor shorts, so that's pretty much all you get out of it, engagement. Shorts on YouTube 100% have ads. The way the pay system for shorts works, if I remember correctly, is that users' views start counting from the moment they see their first ad, and then any shorts they watch get put into a bucket of all other users who saw that ad or other ads, and then the money from that ad gets split out amongst all the creators. There are a number of issues with it this way, like all the shorts you watch before the first ad, but it's what YouTube is doing, and as far as I know, they have a better ad split than TikTok. Not quite how it works. User views start counting immediately, not just after an ad is seen. All ad revenue from ads between shorts gets put into a bucket, and that bucket then gets split up every month based on the percentage of total views each creator got. There is a separate bucket for each country, and both YouTube and music companies take a cut to cover shorts using copyrighted music. The bit of controversy isn't about the shorts you watch before the first ad, as those views are still monetized, but rather the ads you watch before the first short. YouTube, for some reason, has decided if a user opens the Shorts feed and immediately sees an ad, that revenue shouldn't go into the bucket and is all theirs. Proper ADHD traps, those. Weirdly, I think my ADHD is protecting me from them. I can't stand shorts, TikTok, etc., because all you're doing is sitting and watching them. I can watch longer videos just fine because I can split my attention, i.e., if I'm following along an instructional video, then I'm watching as well as doing something, or for longer videos, I can put them on and do something else. But my attention span feels too short to just sit somewhere and only watch videos for longer than a few minutes, even if those videos are different from each other. I got caught in that trap, and I'm still trying to get out. It's hell because I barely get by finishing assignments. Edit. All these comments make me realize this is an actual problem. I had decided to quit YouTube and am now only really using social media that is more text/image based. Honestly, not as bad as I thought so far. I create content myself on my own channels talking about indie games and older games, and I still am not at the point where I am monetized yet, but I know I'm going to have to face these decisions myself, and I'm probably going to be making decisions about what kind of thumbnails and clickbait and what titles I use are probably going to be clickbait, and I'm probably going to face some harsh decisions that I probably won't like. Story 3. Those talking videos with like 3 things happening on the screen simultaneously? Social media is absolutely atrocious for attention span. Using that many distractions on a 30-second clip just exponentially enhances that problem. Edit. For people that want an example, in case any check back in, here's a parody on that trend being used in this video, and there's a link. I don't subscribe to anybody that does this sort of smeg, but the first time I saw a video that was meant to be informative with Minecraft parkour in the background on the top half and funny cat memes on the bottom half, I realized we've reached internet supersaturation. We can't go any lower. We've reached internet rock bottom. I hope. Edit. I forgot people will see this as a challenge. We're doomed, apparently. We can go deeper still. Okay, James Cameron. I thought the multi-split content screens were mostly a tactic to circumvent the hosting platform's anti-piracy/copyright algorithms. Most of what I've seen has the copyright content on one part of the screen, Minecraft, etc. on the second part, plus a secondary soundtrack on the background. Right or wrong? My first exposure to this phenomena was a meme with Subway Surfers, Family Guys, or some ASMR smeg. I had no idea that people actually make videos doing 3 things at once. It's a fracking attention span genocide. I've never heard of these videos. What do you mean by 3 things happening simultaneously? There will be someone or an AI voice telling a story, or talking about a type of makeup, etc. There'll be a screen showing Subway Surfers or Minecraft gameplay, or some other gameplay, or a screen showing colorful sand being mixed together, and a screen showing some new challenge, etc. These screens may change content throughout the 30-second video. It takes micro-entertainment to a new level. If you keep to one medium, Subway Surfer gameplay, someone may get bored halfway through and stop watching. It's a gimmick to keep people's attention. I don't know. I don't know which way it is. I think it's this way. I'm part of it, I guess. I don't think this is as bad as those that are showing 3 things at once. And again, I am not an AI. This is the whole reason behind that.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 4. I no longer watch or read any news. I've had people tell me I'm ignorant because of it. Fair enough. But constantly hearing about politics, who's been unalived or intimately assaulted, where a bomb or natural disaster has unalived thousands of innocent people, how fracked the economy is, etc., on a loop just ruin my mental health and self-esteem. It takes me 45 minutes to drive to work, and I used to listen to the news the whole time. By the time I got to work, my day and mood would be ruined by 9 a.m. Of course horrible things are going on in the world, but I'm one person. It sounds ignorant, but there's not much I can do to change things. Yes, of course, every voice counts. But again, I'm just one person. Now that I'm no longer hearing constant negativity and how the world is fracked, I realize that life is honestly quite all right. Nothing's perfect, but I'm so much happier now. Negativity gets clicks/listens more than positivity does, and news channels capitalize on this and give people the worst, most sensationalized news possible to keep them listening. People weren't designed to know more than a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 people max. Natural empathy is being overloaded, and your soul damaged by constantly hearing about millions of people suffering who we have no capability to help or comfort. I also have this theory that we're not built to handle reading the thoughts of so many other people. Like literally reading people's posts and comments and tweets all day has a profound impact on the human psyche. When you read things, you're creating a voice in your head. You're hearing the innermost feelings and thoughts of thousands of people every day, echoed back to you in your own voice, inside your own head. A cacophony of internal dialogue that doesn't go anywhere. It just rests in your brain like a part of you, being tossed around until the brain finds ways to connect it to your own actual experiences. This can be beneficial if you're trying to learn a new skill or language, but most people just absorb smeg that makes them feel bad or validates their cynicism in some way, or reinforces negative thoughts they've already been having. We're filling our minds with countless thoughts that on some level the brain can't really distinguish as belonging to us or others. This has to be having a profound and dangerous effect on the way we look at ourselves in the world. Absolutely, I feel this. Recently, I was listening to a daily news podcast on my way to work, with the top story being Ukrainians talking about how many people they've lost and how their lives have changed and how fatality is such a part of their life now. By the time I got to work, I was just sobbing in my car because my heart is broken for these people. I'm all for being caught up on what's happening, but I have to give myself news diets and breaks just so I can live a productive and peaceful life. Story 5. Outrage. It's straight up poison to your mental health, but we thrive on it, yearn for it. Places like TikTok, Twitter, and public freakout pass it out like dealers for little more than some attention, poisoning people to feel popular. Worse, it's useful to those in control, so there's no escaping it. Political parties and activists need you to be outraged, one-tracked, immune to real empathy, and motivated to solidify their power, so here we are. I avoided scrolling through one website's popular feed for years because it was so full of outrage subs like public freakout, trashy, idiots in cars, I am a total piece of smeg, etc. I don't want to hear that negativity in my feed. Once they added support for blacklisting subs, I immediately added those. Yeah, I did too. It was almost surprising how much of a difference it made on my day. I didn't realize just how much it made me feel like smeg and carried it through the day and to the people in my life. Found a bunch of uplifting/interesting/hobby subs, and it made that website such a more positive experience in my life. I did the same when I realized Reddit was pushing videos of people getting unalived and beat up on me on a daily basis. I had to ask myself why I was starting my day by watching that smeg. I read 1984 a few weeks ago, and the description of the 2 minutes hate honestly kind of scared me once I understood it. For context, it's a daily ceremony where all people gather around a TV-like device and watch a government propaganda broadcast focused on brewing hatred. The horrible thing about the 2 minutes hate was not that one was obliged to act a part, but on the contrary, that it was impossible to avoid joining in. Within 30 seconds, any pretense was always necessary. A hideous ecstasy of fear and vindictiveness, a desire to unalive, to torture, to smash faces in with a sledgehammer seemed to flow through the whole group of people like an electric current, turning one, even against one's will, into a grimacing, screaming lunatic. And yet, the rage that one felt was an abstract, undirected emotion which could be switched from one object to another like the flame of a blow lamp. The best, read worst thing about the 2 minutes hate is that the propaganda they show is actually telling them the truth about their condition. So people are trained to willingly reject the truth when presented with it. I believe 1984 is the most important book ever written, and I find its almost mystical ability to explain every facet of propaganda and totalitarianism of any type quite amazing. Sometimes I find it hard to believe that this was written by a single British Army vet spending his twilight years depressed on a rainy island in the 40s. Edit. Thanks for the additional info on Orwell's life. The man had seen quite a bit in his time. I don't know if you've read Homage to Catalonia, but it's Orwell telling his real-life story. I forget his real name, but obviously he didn't fight as George Orwell, traveling as a foreign fighter to assist in the defense of Catalonia against the fascists. Eventually, the Republican Spanish government, propped up by the Soviets, banned his anarchist-leaning political party, and he was forced to flee the country. There's a reason he sees the authoritarians in every stripe, capitalists and Leninists both. If you've never read it, I really recommend reading 1984. I've read that and a lot of the other dystopian novels of that time. 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451. Really read them. It reads a lot into the topic of this video. Story 7. I'm gonna say vaping. I knocked it on the head as my New Year's resolution. First time I was completely nicotine-free, and still going strong, but I genuinely felt like I was about to cough my lungs up about 90% of the time. If I have to be honest, I don't miss either, but I started vaping to stop smoking. I hate seeing young kids and teens do it, ones who wouldn't have even considered smoking. Edit. I'm talking about disposable vapes. Should have clarified that beforehand. I truly lucked out. When I got pregnant, I had to stop vaping for obvious reasons, but my nausea was so bad I couldn't even be in the same room as vape juice without vomiting. Huge aversions. After I had my baby, I wanted nicotine again, but thankfully my aversions are still going strong. Been 3 years vape-free. I quit smoking nearly 11 years ago with vaping. While I do feel a lot better, I know I need to quit this too. My brother recently went cold turkey from views and says he feels a ton better now. Need to take that next step. From what I know, and I've done a lot of research on vaping, it's obviously safer than smoking cigarettes, but still not completely safe. So I want to quit all nicotine. Lung scan in December was clear. I got one every few years since I'm a former smoker, but gotta kick this vaping. And yeah, seeing teens who've never considered smoking now vaping, that sucks. Story 8. Personally, I'm horrendously addicted to nicotine, and it's probably unaliving me. It took me a solid month to quit. Switched to 4 milligrams gum for 2 weeks, then 2 milligrams for the next 2. I hate the gum, so it slowly became less and less because I just couldn't be bothered as often, until I just stopped altogether. It's a pretty strange feeling as I've been using nicotine daily, hourly probably, for 11 years. Feel more calm in a way. Really miss it for certain occasions, though. After the gym and after intimacy, I miss that little extra reward. I smoked 2.5 packs a day for around 18 years. Quit cold turkey the day my wife told me she was pregnant with our first kid. That was pretty difficult. Haven't touched nicotine since, but man, I miss it. I have dreams where I'm smoking, and I wake up feeling guilty that I ruined my streak. I had a failed back surgery a few years later, major malpractice that resulted in partial paralysis and an uncontrolled pain crisis for over a year, resulting in me taking massive amounts of oxy. They had me on 180 milligrams extended release 3 times a day and 50 milligrams normal 6 times a day, among other things. After 3 years of this, I couldn't take it anymore, and I went to my brother's and quit the opiates cold turkey. I'd quit smoking 1,000 times in a row before going through the opiate withdrawals again. Quitting smoking is hard, but at least it doesn't hurt. Story 9. Facebook. Edit. Facebook, Instagram, etc. Any social media where you're comparing your life against other people's lives. People need to learn to treat social media like a photoshopped image. It may look real, but it may not be.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.